Now, in Sri Lanka, President Maithripala Sirisena has addressed a special session of Parliament to introduce constitutional reforms. It's been 1 year since Sirisena was elected president on a promise of a new era in politics. But international campaigners say human rights abuses have continued. Let's take a closer look at Sirisena's first year in office. Now, in January 2015, he took over from former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, a strongman who led the country for 10 years during the end of the country's civil war. The UN says up to 40,000 people may have died at the hands of the government forces in the last stages of that war. Now, in June, Sirisena dissolved parliament and called fresh elections for August in an attempt to consolidate power and carry out his promised reforms. Now Sirisena has started a constitutional reform process which will give wider power to the Prime Minister and Parliament. The Constitutional Assembly will have a role in drafting a new constitution for Sri Lanka. Well, let's speak now to Amal Jayasigha in Colombo. Amal, good to speak to you this morning. 1 year after coming to power, has President Sirisena delivered on his promise to reform the constitution?
Well, actually, the answer is yes and no, because his main promise was to give up most of the executive powers he had. So to some extent, he has shed some of the powers, but he has not completely abolished the constitution. So that is what he has promised. But today what he has done is he has set the stage, or he has announced an agenda, a reform program to bring about a new constitution.
And he's also promised to be accountable for war crimes. And as we're actually just looking at pictures of him pardoning someone who tried to assassinate him a few years ago. Is his peace and reconciliation plan coming together?
Well, this is actually, he came to power on a platform of reconciliation and accountability. Lots of Tamils supported him because he promised reconciliation along with accountability. But when it comes to accountability, he has been quite slow to deliver on the promise of war crimes investigation. But on the reconciliation front, he has taken some measures. For example, returning the land that is occupied by government forces. This is private land taken from minority Tamils. Now, some of that land has now been given back. Then also he has, as you showed, he has also pardoned a man who tried to assassinate him 10 years ago, and this was a member of the Tamil Tiger movement. So he has shown some sort of some move towards reconciliation. But when it comes to accountability, especially the question of about 40,000 people who were supposed to have been killed by government forces in the final stages, well, he has not started any inquiry as yet, but he has indeed promised that he would ensure any wrongdoers would be punished. But we are yet to see action on that front.
And how are the Tamil minority in the country at the moment? How is the population? Are they happy with the way that the country is now moving forward?
Well, if you talk to the Tamils, there is a sense that they probably feel a lot safer than before. And the security forces, by and large, have been confined to their barracks. You don't see that much of a military presence like 6 years ago. So to some extent, the Tamils have accepted that things have changed for the better, but a lot more needs to be done. And on the political front, actually the Tamil minority has become the major opposition party in the country, and they seem to be supporting the government so far. So there is some understanding between the Tamil political leadership and President Sirisena's administration. So they seem to be working quite closely at the moment, but a lot more needs to be done from the president's side to ensure that the Tamils feel much safer.
Well, Amal Jayasigha, thank you very much for that interesting insight into politics in Sri Lanka.